Coming up on Mountain News this morning, the 2020 MLB Draft began last night. We'll have some folks from Eastern Kentucky in the mix. And restaurants here in Kentucky will soon be able to expand their capacity, but many owners worry they can't do it safely. And two Eastern Kentuckians came together to write a book with the goal of helping children better understand and cope with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News This Morning.
Good morning. It is 6:32 on this Thursday, June the 11th. I'm Will Puckett. Thank you for tuning in to Mountain News this morning. Saw a little bit of rain yesterday. Some people may have even gotten in on the storm action, but it's setting up for what should be a gorgeous stretch of about 7 days. Let's bring Brandon in this morning to give us just a quick glimpse of what to expect on this Friday Eve. Brandon, good morning.
Good morning, Will. We're looking at the clouds still hovering around parts of the area. You see the rain moved down late last night and out of our area completely around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But again, it's still cloudy in some locations. Some areas back out closer to I-75 in better shape this morning. We take a look at our temperatures, and they're basically anywhere between 61 and 65. Pikeville, the only holdout now. Everybody else is down below 65 at this point this morning. Still a little bit on the muggy side. Be careful of that this morning, especially if you're planning on maybe taking a run or a jog early, because it'll be a little bit tougher to breathe, especially when there's all that moisture in the air. But for the most part, it's just going to be sticky feeling outside this morning. Hopefully getting a little bit less in the way of humidity by this afternoon as temperatures top out right around 79. Full forecast on the way here in just a few minutes. Will?
All righty, Brandon, we'll be back with you. Thank you. Well, there are athletes whose names are synonymous with their sport, from Tom Brady in football to Tiger Woods and golf. Around Eastern Kentucky, it might be J.R. VanHoose in basketball. But there is one thing about J.R. that you might not know. WYMT's Camille Gear explains.
A state champion.
It's Ashland against Paintsville with the state championship on the line.
A Mr. Basketball.
And he put it in. He got in trouble in there, but
A D1 athlete.
Something that I've always done.
All words to describe J.R. VanHoose. But there is something else that describes him.
Things that I enjoyed, Civil War, World War II, basketball.
A history buff.
That is my passion. And I think when kids feel that you're passionate about something, they try to be a little bit more interested in that.
Not only is it one of his passions, he also teaches it. Most recently teaching AP U.S. history.
History just became something natural. It wasn't something that I sought out. It wasn't something that, I tried to make my journey. It just kind of happened for me. I'm pretty glad it did.
And his most recent history venture, honoring his great uncle on the 75th anniversary of his death in the Battle of Okinawa.
To really do something special for my family. It was just going to be an article about his life and his sacrifice, and it really turned into a lot more.
Giving his great aunt a piece of history, an old uniform with his medals.
I still have some great aunts and uncles that are living that, they could petition to get replacement medals. It went from, I'm going to just write an article and honor my family to, I'm going to make it this big, glorious production. And
with one goal in mind.
And let's face it, people who fought in World War II or died 75 years ago, if their family's not alive, people tend to forget about them. So, it was bringing attention to that event.
To keep memories of fallen soldiers alive. In Johnson County, Camille Gear, WYMT, Mountain News.
Our greatest generation, and too many of them are leaving us, that's for sure. Well, the 2020 MLB Draft began last night. The draft will have some Eastern Kentucky flavor added to it, not just in local prospects who could hear their name, but with someone who represents the players. Somerset Mayor Alan Keck also runs Keck Sports Management, serving as an agent. Keck represented his first big league player in David Robertson back in 2014. Since 2015, Keck has represented at least one player in the draft every year.
When I was at Western Kentucky, my college roommate, Jordan Newton, was a 6th rounder from the Detroit Tigers, and I got to see the process. He was an All-American catcher and had a lot of agents soliciting his business, and I got to sit in a few of those meetings with he and his family, and I was just really intrigued. Becoming an agent checked a lot of boxes for me. Sports and competition and negotiation.
Go Tops! Keck represented Eastern Kentucky's Aaron Oceanbine in 2018. The pitcher is currently on the roster for the Great Lakes Loons, an affiliate of the LA Dodgers. Keck has 2 players in this year's draft. Well, Governor Andy Beshear announced 191 new COVID-19 cases and 7 new deaths in Kentucky last night. At least 11,883 Kentuckians have tested positive for the virus. The death toll is now at 484. At least 3,375 people have recovered. There is only one county now without at least 1 case, and that's Robertson County. Only 2 counties in our region have more than 50 cases, and that's Jackson and Pulaski. Well, it's been about 2.5 weeks since restaurants were allowed to reopen at 33% capacity plus outdoor seating. Now the governor is preparing to expand that to 50% capacity. However, some restaurant owners say it's near impossible to maintain social distancing at that capacity.
Well, the problem lies in the fact that it has to do with being able to stay within the 6-foot separation, okay? So with that, your area in your restaurant, you may not have room to do that. So 50%, how do you take 50% of the people and keep them 6 feet apart?
Governor Beshear said restaurants will be able to move to 50% capacity 1 month after they opened. For many, that date is June 22nd. Well, for a young child, the COVID-19 outbreak is hard to understand. So 2 people took it upon themselves to write a children's book. The book is a how-to book following a little hero who is fighting the virus. The book also explains health guidelines the CDC has released. Author Hank Geveden talked with local health officials and doctors, asking them what we should be teaching children. Author Killeen Turner brought this idea of the virus to life.
I called her and I said, can we make him up out of like rib bones, and his face moves around and he kind of mutates continually. And from the original sketches she did to the final cover, I have been blown away.
They have sold more than 200 copies of the book so far. In the future, they hope to hold book signings and have copies available locally. Well, in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, helpers and heroes have emerged across the nation. We highlight them every morning. While school officials juggled the end of the school year, one county superintendent was not only in charge of the health and safety of her district, but also of herself. WYMT's Lacey Roberts has more.
Down these hallways, you will often see Knott County Schools Superintendent Kim King.
I've always been one to make sure I'm in the buildings once a week at least.
Now taking extra precautions due to COVID-19 and her own illness, still there is work to do.
We're going to work our second meeting for the survey team to get her plan to re-enter school.
Meetings these days take a new focus.
I was very pleased. I don't know how you all felt about the number of people completing the survey.
As she and faculty try to decide what the upcoming school year will look like.
As you know, they've lightened the guidelines of what we can do on a bus now.
While those decisions are tough, she and doctors use rounds of chemotherapy to help her body fight cancer cells.
First time I was diagnosed with cancer, I had been superintendent, 5 years.
That was about 1 decade ago. Then 5 years later, in 2015, the cancer returned, this time in her liver and back.
I'm on my 6th set right now.
Each Monday, she drives to Lexington for treatments.
We don't stop and get out a lot.
And you said we?
My husband. We've been married 31 years in 2 weeks.
King's husband was diagnosed with laryngeal cancer just months after her second diagnosis, both beginning treatment within months of one another.
It was a big shock to my husband and my daughter. She was a senior in high school, so that was, it was a big change for her. She had a lot to go through and to deal with, and she handled it great. She was a trooper.
Her daughter Kennedy is now a third-year medical school student at the Kentucky College of Osteopathic Medicine in Pikeville.
She hasn't quit working. She hasn't given up. It's just helped me push through this, and that's what I hope. I'm struggling, Lacey.
Emotions still run high.
And really just seeing Mom's strength, that no matter how sick she is, no matter what treatment she's gone through. She never gives up. She keeps trucking through. She keeps going to work, and you'll never hear her complain.
Putting work before herself, a habit she says is unbreakable.
That is me. That's what I do. That's me.
Also unbreakable, her spirit.
I mean, I want people to know that I'm so thankful to God.
No, you told me. You told me.
I'm very thankful to God to be here.
Leaving her situation, her life in his hands. In Knott County, Lacey Roberts, WYMT Mountain News.
Now, King says at their last visit for treatment, her husband was told he is now cancer-free, and Kim King is doing just fine.
Time now for our Daily Helpers and Heroes segment, where we highlight folks on the front lines across the region. Let's get right into the pictures this morning. Our first one comes to us from Sandy. This is her son, Brandon Roark. Brandon is a Kentucky State Trooper at the Richmond Post. He's also part of the Legislative Security Detail in Frankfort. Thank you, Brandon, for your service to our state and representing the mountains well in other parts of our great state. Our next picture was submitted by Ned. This is his daughter, Nancy Pillersdorf. She is definitely on the front lines working the midnight shift at the COVID unit at a Louisville hospital. Thank you, Nancy, for your hard work and dedication to all those who depend on you. And finally, our last picture today comes to us from Betsy, and this one is special. Meet Tammy Clemens. She has worked as a nurse for ARH for the last 27 years, which absolutely qualifies her for helper status. But during this pandemic, Tammy was diagnosed with cerebral lymphoma and is now fighting that awful disease with intense chemotherapy. As a cancer survivor, I can tell you how much of a toll that takes on your body. Tammy, keep fighting, and thank you for being a hero to me and to all of us. I want to give a special shout out there to Kim and BB King, who you just heard from in Lacey's story. Now, if you'd like to get those helpers and heroes into us, you can do that a couple of different ways. You can go to WYMT.com, click on the drop-down menu on the side of the website there, and click on the helpers and heroes link, or you can also send those pictures to me with a description on my Facebook page at Brandon Robinson, WYMT. Will?
All righty, Brandon, thank you. And thank you for joining us. We'll be right back with more mountain news in just a little bit.